Nothing is impossible. Everything is possible. I was thinking possible, and I said impossible. That's great. That's great. He guides the humble in what is right and teaches them his way. Psalms chapter 25, verse 9. My outtake on that is Happy New Year. Everybody gets ready for the New Year, right? What are we going to do today? We're going to start some New Year's resolutions, right? Tonight, everybody tries to make New Year's resolutions. The only thing that I can ask God is for more patience. You know, and I think anybody can ask for more patience. Lines, for example. Has anybody ever been in a line? McDonald's. Somebody pulls up and they just stare at the screen. They've had the same stuff since you were 6 years old. You know, those pictures, you're reading the thing and there's pictures. When I go in the lobby and I stand in line, there's a big line, I jump behind the counter and start working fries. I've been employee of the week twice. And I don't even work there. But you know what? It's okay because I get that free parking spot and my picture's up on the wall. So, you got to enjoy the new year. I'm looking forward to 2018. I know a lot of people are. If this is your first time with us at Christpoint Church, I want to say welcome home. This first time visitor card, if you can fill that out and turn that in, we've got a nice gift for you. We just want to be in contact with you. A few announcements. Ladies luncheon, January the 13th, Casaluna at noon. And ladies, y'all got it made. Ladies game and card night on January the 20th, starting at 4 p.m. here at the church. Bring finger food, snacks, and your favorite game. Can men come to this? Because this speak out, when somebody brings this, I want to be part of that. I want to see the speak out game at Christpoint. It's going to be awesome. Also coming in January, financial peace. If you have any questions about that, see Jeff or Peggy Harmon. Dynamic marriage, also coming in January. See Kim or Daryl Lee if you have any questions about that. Could everybody please stand with me? It's a glorious day, love and life. If you could just find a few people, shake their hand, tell them you love them, tell them welcome home. Come back, let's have a great worship.
I love having Super Johnny do announcements, but I love even more getting to follow Super Johnny doing announcements because the punchlines just write themselves, don't they? For clarification, me and you cannot go to the ladies' luncheon or the ladies' game night. Just for clarification, that would be impossible. All right, we're going to shift gears just a little bit. It's time to take up our tithes, our God's tithes, and your offerings. And if you're new here, this is your first time here, please know that this is not a blab it and grab it prayer. Okay, this is something that we do pray it together. We pray it corporately, but we don't just believe you can just say it and you just grab it. All right. So, if you will, we're going to pray this prayer together. As we receive this morning's tithes and offerings, we are believing you, our Lord, for provision and protection, jobs and better jobs, raises and bonuses, benefits, sales and commissions, favorable settlements and contracts, interest and income, rebates and returns, checks in the mail, gifts and surprises, money found and debts paid off, expenses decreased and blessings increased. Thank you, Lord, for meeting all of my financial needs so that I may have more than enough to give into the kingdom of God and promote the gospel of Jesus Christ. And everybody said, Amen.
how much God loves you, how much Papa loves heaven came down, and heaven came down, rescued me. Heaven came down, set me free. Heaven came down, when heaven came down, and heaven came down so I could see that you are God and you breathe new life into me.
Sing it just a little bit more.
And heaven came down and rescued me. Heaven came down and set me free. Heaven came down when heaven came down. And heaven came down so I could see that you are God and you breathe new life into me. Oh yeah. When heaven came down and rescued me, heaven came down and set me free. Heaven came down when heaven came down. And heaven came down so I could see that you are God and you breathe new life into me. And heaven came down.
Pastor Dan. I thought for just a few minutes, when Hannah started talking about worship, that she was actually going to preach my message. But it's beautiful whenever God gives you something, that He confirms it, that she didn't know my message. And then she started talking about a story. I'm like, Lord, if she just does this, I'm going to be upset because I've really worked on this. But God's awesome in His confirmation. I do want to tell you a story today. Actually, I'm going to read you a story today. I like to read, and when I read, I like to get lost in the story. And there are a lot of times that I can identify with certain characters, as most people do when you read a book. And usually, my character is the first one that dies out for some reason, gets killed off. But I can still relate to him somewhat. But there's a story, even the pastor last week was talking about the woman that will never be forgotten. Every time that the gospel's spoken, this is a woman that will, this story will go on forever. And it was the woman who anointed Jesus right in the middle of the dinner. Now that story is also in all four gospels. But I'm going to read just a couple of them. The stories in Luke and in Mark, because it kind of gets the gist of it. As I read this story, I'd like for you to think about where you are in this story. Because in this story, every person that's in this room is somewhere in it. Luke chapter 7, verse 36 through verse 50 says, one of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him. And he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. Now, a lot of other versions say that he ate. They were eating at the table. Some say he was reclining at the table. Either way, reclining and eating, it was already my favorite verse. If it was the least bit becoming, I would look like an otter eating my dinner, laid back with my plate right here. Don't judge me. And behold, a woman of the city who was a sinner, when she learned that he was reclining at the table at the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of ointment. And standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head and kissed his feet and anointed them with the ointment. Now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this is who's touching him, for she's a sinner. And Jesus answered and said unto him, Simon, I have something to say to you. And he said, go and tell it, teacher. A certain moneylender had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now, which of them will love him more? Simon said, the one, I suppose, for whom he canceled the larger debt. And he said to him, you judged rightly. Then turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she's wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but from the time I came in, she's not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she's anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But he who is forgiven little, loves little. And he said to her, your sins are forgiven. Then those who were at the table with him began to say among themselves, who is this? Who even forgives sins? And he said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. And again in Mark chapter 14, starting in verse 3. And while he was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, he was reclining at the table. Again. This is good enough for Jesus. Old John's going to do it too. I'm just going to tell you. A woman came with an alabaster flask of ointment of pure nard, very costly, and she broke the flask and poured it over his head. There were some who said to themselves indignantly, why was this ointment wasted like this? For this ointment could have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor. And they scolded her, but Jesus said, y'all leave her alone. Why you trouble her? She's done a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you want to, you can do good for them. But you will not always have me. She's done what she could. She's anointed my body beforehand for burial. And truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed, in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her. Every single one of us is in this story somewhere. Now, as I read that, did you find the character that you most identify with? And how does it reflect in the heart in which you worship? Let's take a look at a few of these. First is Jesus. First character, Jesus. Everybody would love to say, I identify with Jesus. Because, that's the goal. We're Christians, right? And I remember growing up in Sunday school, if you didn't know the answer, you pretty much just guessed Jesus, because that was typically going to be the right answer. However, it doesn't work with this one. I would love to be able to say, I identify with Jesus. People are anointing me with perfume all the time. Look, I can't even go out to eat anymore. But I can't. Because the reality is, people are always trying to anoint me with deodorant, and they don't want to go out with me anymore. All right, but since Jesus is the story, in this story, Jesus is the only one that's still alive. All right? And at Christ Point, we're Jesus focused. So we're going to talk about Jesus for just a minute. How does Jesus receive this woman's offering? I don't know if you noticed, he was the only one who received this offering in a positive manner. The only one in the place that received it positively. What can we give God, who created the whole universe? Right? It's kind of like what 1 Chronicles 29:14 says, but who am I? This is David saying, who am I and who are my people, and why should we, and that we should be able to give this generously. Generously is this: everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. He also said later in the psalm, before every animal in the forest is mine, he's speaking of God, and the cattle of 1,000 hills. We could give God the whole planet. It talked about the costliness of the ointment, but we could give him everything, but technically he gives it to us. Anyway, it's kind of like it's not about the oil, it's not about the perfume that she gave him, just because of the value of it. I mean, it's kind of like we could give him the whole world, the solar system, everything in it, and it's kind of like giving him pocket lint. Like, hey, God, these are my favorite pants. Here's some pocket lint for you. Okay, it's basically how that is as far as the value of it. But in reality, Jesus has given us, say like, Jesus, can I have some pocket lint? And he gives you pocket lint, and then you just give it back to him. It's basically the same concept. He gave and she gave. And so the value of the stuff itself wasn't it. So where was it at? Where was the, he esteems the heart. So let's move on to Mary. Now Mary is the one that we actually would love to be like in this story. Every person in here would like to be like the Mary. If we can't be like Jesus, which that sounded so wrong, didn't it? We want to be like Jesus, but we ain't going to be Jesus. But we could be Mary. All right? So let's take a look at Mary. And Mary was a lot like a lot of us. Mary had a questionable past. Jesus forgave all that.
Thank God.
Yes, thank God. Mary had to break through the walls here. You know, can you imagine just Mary having to walk through where she had to walk through to worship Jesus like she worshiped Jesus? But what did she give him? What she gave him was her offering. It was an alabaster jar full of nard, spikenard perfume, which is very expensive at the time. For those who don't know, it's only grown in the Himalayan mountains. So to get it where she was at the time, it cost a lot of money to get it there. It was worth 300 denarii, which is about a year's wages, and according to U.S. Labor and Statistics, in dollar amounts our day, today would be worth about $31,000. Anybody ever just forked over $31,000 at one time? You don't have to raise your hand, but we could be friends. Most of us struggle giving 10%. We're not going there today, don't worry. But to give that kind of money, a year's wages at one time, to really lavishly give. I'm going to tell myself a couple times here today. One time, I had a car. It was an extra car. I needed some money. I was going to sell this car. And God told me to give this car away. And he told me to give it to a woman that I could not stand. I'm telling you, it was definitely a faith thing. And I'm not proud of this at all. I'm just telling you how good God is when I finished. But I really didn't like this woman. I was a youth pastor at the time. This mom was wanting to run the show or something. I don't know. But we couldn't get along. And I just didn't like her. And God said, give her the car. And so I said, Lord, I'm going to need a burning bush or something. I need you to confirm this through something miraculous. And he didn't. He just kept on me about giving her the car. And I gave her the car. And there have been a few times in my life since then that I've needed a car. And I'm here to tell you that I have been given 3 cars and 1 motorcycle since that time.
Wow.
Okay, so you can't outgive God. It's not about what you give. It's not about what Mary gave. It was the heart in which she gave with. All right? So I don't know if Mary knew it or not. I don't know if she realized that she was anointing him for burial. But at that time, the Jewish people, you couldn't touch a dead body, so you couldn't anoint him after he was dead. She really just wanted to give him everything that she had. And I know that I have sitting here a lot of times, and I've seen people worship, and it looked like they worshiped with all they had. And I was like, man, I wish I could do that. And God said, I wish you would. And a lot of times I still didn't.
Yeah.
But you know, even too, when Jesus was a man, and what was he doing, or what was she doing? She may not even realize all the things that she was doing. Maybe even, he may have just liked it just for the comfort of it. He knew what he was fixing to face. He knew what he was about to get into. And so, just the nice anointing, just the comfort feeling of that, and in that moment, he's natural. He's a man at that time, and he's just, it may have been something, just a blessing for him, one that he really wanted. It's kind of like New Year's resolutions. That's what, tomorrow? Is tomorrow the 1st? So today we eat everything that we possibly can, right? For comfort.
That's right.
Okay, for people who are doing a diet, for me personally, if I was going to, I'd wait like 3 weeks. That way I get all the equipment half price that other people have started for a few weeks, and we just go from there. So I believe this was a lot more than just 300 denarii worth of perfume that she gave him. But I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes. There are others in here that are like the Pharisees in this passage. The Pharisee is the guy you really, you don't want to be like. I'll confess that too. I've been that guy. I've been that church guy who's seen somebody that I know wasn't living right, wasn't doing right, going to post Jesus stuff on Facebook. And I was like, Lord, you know, God knows. You know God ain't hitting the like button on that. You know? Two things. One, you don't know what happened between the time you seen them last and the time they posted that. And more importantly, it's none of your business what they do. It's not for you. It's for God to judge their hearts. So let's not be that Pharisee. I don't think it's a coincidence either that the Pharisees were there. I don't know if you noticed this or not, but Jesus made a habit of correcting Pharisees when He's seen them. And so the fact that there were Pharisees there, I don't think was an accident. It was another opportunity to show the church people there was some room to tighten up a little bit.
That's right.
And that carried out, even that's really carried out for us just as well, even today. So, you know, we can fall in this trap so many times, and we're really not supposed to compare ourselves amongst themselves, which is what the Pharisees did. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but that's why the Ten Commandments were created. The people were judging themselves among themselves. They were measuring themselves like, I'm okay, so I'm not the best person in the world, but I'm better than this person. And so that's what they did. So you need to check your heart and see if that's where you're at in this story, and be honest with yourself. When we see somebody worshiping God, it's a good thing. We should be glad. We should ask, what have we done really to worship God today? A lot of times, man, I grew up, I don't want to say religious, but it was religious, but also Pentecostal background. And quite often, I don't know how many people in here have grown up with a Pentecostal background. I've been in Pentecostal churches, or sometimes they get a little crazy with their worship. And I shouldn't say crazy in a bad way. They do get a little wild. And that's okay. I learned a long time ago that you can't tell somebody how to worship because you don't know what they came from. Let me tell you something. I may just have a normal everyday life, things going normal, but somebody in here, somebody's son just got filled with the Holy Ghost, and they're going to dance. Let them dance. Let them do their thing. There were also some other people in this story, but we're running out of options. Have you found who you were yet? There were the disciples. Mark's gospel isn't very specific. It just says in verse 4 that there were some who said to themselves indignantly, why was this ointment wasted like that? Matthew's gospel, it actually does identify that it was some of the disciples. But then John's gospel, when he tells the story, he just throws Judas under the bus. Okay, so he tells you it was Judas. Judas is the one asking about why we're wasting this money. Now, Judas was the treasurer. Judas, listen, anybody, and I'm going to tell you, and this is speaking for you in here, if God can't trust you, if you're going to sell out yourself for 30 pieces of silver, you will never see 300 denarii. So the disciples were also in there. Even the disciples didn't take it very well. We do it too. You know, we say that's one way of worship, and is it really necessary? It looks a little silly sometimes. Sometimes it looks a little different, but that's why we're peculiar people. But Jesus did a great job of shutting them down. Whenever they started that stuff about how somebody else is worshiping, and it's like, this is wasted, why are we doing it like this? He says, hey, y'all need to stop. Here's some pretty good advice. If Jesus tells his guys not to judge somebody about the way they worship, you probably shouldn't too. I shouldn't either. She was worshiping in a way that will no longer be available to her. She couldn't touch him after that. And so she knew that she had to give it all she had. And she was in that moment. Because, you know, and she was, are they saying don't give to the poor? Of course not. You know, of course not. There's a time for it. Jesus, there's a time for it. And you do it. You can worship God by giving to the poor all the time. You have them all the time. It just means don't judge the way other people worship. So have you found your place in the story yet? Have you found where you are? There's one more group of people that we haven't touched on yet. There were a lot of people in there that weren't really spoken of. There were people who just sat there and they just watched everything go down. Didn't do anything, didn't worship, wasn't upset. They just sat there and did nothing. Is that you? Is that where you're at in this place of worship? When you see somebody else worship or other things are going on, do you think that's where we need to be? What's the appropriate response to worship? Revelations has a very clear picture of it. It gives you a glimpse of what heaven is like in the 4th chapter of Revelation. It says, whenever the living creatures or beings give glory, honor, and thanks to him who sits on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him who sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever. They lay their crowns down before the throne and say, you are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they will be created and have their being. So to give you a glimpse of when somebody else is worshiping God, we can sit there and do nothing, or we can join them. If we get our picture from heaven, we're to join them. Where are you in this story? I said we come back to Mary. And we're going to come back to Mary. I think the importance of where Mary was worshiping was not about how much money that she had to give or how much. There was a good opportunity to correct people that were out of line for Jesus to do that and for us to know that as well. Here's the thing. A lot of us don't get into the worship like we want to worship because of what's in the jar. It's not about the cost of the of the oil or the perfume. What it is how she got that perfume. Some theologians say that she was a prostitute. Some just say a sinner. What put the oil in the jar? Where did she get that? That was her past. It wasn't that she was necessarily the dollar amount meant nothing. What it is most of us here haven't done like she's done and broken the jar. When we get into our worship, it's like we hold on just to a little bit of that oil. She broke the jar, there was none there. The oil represents that past, how she got to where she was today, how she made her living, how she got by. It defined who she was that day. Most of us sitting in here today have something in our past. It seems like whenever we just want to get involved in worship, it feels like that something just drags at us. There's a past sin, whether it's 2 days ago or 2 decades ago. Some people will hold on to these things for so long, and you just cannot get into the worship like you need to get into the worship, even like you want to get into the worship. Hannah, will you come? Today we want to give you an opportunity, first, to be a child of God. When we talk about worship, and you see these people really get into worship, and it's the beauty of Christpoint Church here. We do so many things together, and this is one thing also that we're going to do together. I want to talk to you about worship in just a minute, but I want to address this first. If you're here today and you don't know the Lord as your Savior, and the Lord's pulling to your heart right now, and you're just thinking, man, I want to worship like that I want to worship. I want to break this flag. Everything in my past, all the junk that I have in my past, I just want to lay that somewhere else and walk away from it. You can do that today. Stand with me. say this prayer together. Because that's what we do at Christpoint Church. We love you, and we're going to say it with you. You're not going to have to face anything on anymore. If you're here today and you don't know the Lord as your Savior, I'm going to let you just do just a quick prayer. We're all going to do it. And then we're going to move into some oil pouring here in just a few minutes. Church, pray this prayer with me. Father, here I am. I thank you for sending your Son to die for me, a sinner. I thank you that he rose from the grave, that I can rise up out of this mess that I'm in. I ask you to be Lord of my life. Take control and lead me where you would have me go. I thank you, Lord, for saving my soul. In Jesus' name. Amen. Now, if you prayed that prayer for me, everybody else just heads bowed, eyes closed. If you prayed that prayer for the first time today, will you just raise your hand and show me just real quick? Let me see. If anybody here prayed that prayer for the first time today, all right. Now we want to switch gears just a little bit. Is there anybody here that wishes they could worship like the woman in that story worship, but they just haven't? No reason, no rhyme to life. Get caught up in everything else. We want to open these altars today. I want to give you an opportunity to just break the flask today. You don't have to carry this mess home with you. You don't have to take your past home with you. If you just want to love on him in a way that nobody else does, or in a way that everybody else does, and you just wanted to. You can't tell anybody how to worship. I'm not going to tell you how to worship. I'm not going to tell you how to offer anything to God. I can tell you for me personally. I can take it to an altar because it helps me to just visualize leaving it at the altar when I leave it. But we're going to open these altars and we'll pray with you. If you want us to pray with you, if you want to pray here, we'll pray just over you. But if you want us to pray with you, just give my attention and we'll do that too. But I want to open these altars and give everybody here just a few minutes just to break that flask, to worship God like the woman with the alabaster box. Just to worship God like he deserves to be worshipped. The way that you want to worship, but for whatever reason you haven't done it yet. To just give yourself over to God and just let him bless you the same way that he blessed the woman with the ointment, in the same way she blessed him.